Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? It's the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain here with Kenny Simpson. And we are joined today by, you've become friend of the show now, Cody. This is the second time. So we're going to call you friend of the show so you'll keep coming back because we love everything you bring to our peoples. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick? I'm sure everyone knows you, but, you know, I would screw up your
introduction. No, I appreciate it. Anything, you know, me and Kenny have been doing this forever. So anytime Kenny calls me and is like, hey, you want to hop on, I'm always down. So I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Cody Alexander. I run Match Quarters. You can find everything at matchquarters.com. Essentially, that's what I do. I'm basically a defensive think tank. That's what I'm your quality control coach. That's essentially what I do. I do, in-depth research projects on defense, clinics, videos, anything you can imagine. So thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. And, Match Quarters, I'm going to go ahead and let you spill about what it does, where people can go find it, because I'll forget at the end, and I don't want to do that.
So the best place to go is matchquarters.com. Just type it into whether you're on your phone or computer, go to that. I have links literally to everything on Match Quarters. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need, from my books all the way to if you want to follow me on any kind of social.
Awesome. If you are a newer DC, I use this every day. It's sitting beside my computer because every single day I dig back into this book. So if you're new DC or new defensive coach and you want to look at a new way to break down your offensive opponent, the book is self-explanatory. It teaches you everything. I think you even came back and did you dumbed some of it back down for high school?
Yeah, so that's basically what we did at the high school level. That's what I kind of established at the high school level. Okay. It's kind of whittled down. I think there's only a few things that I changed, but most of those are just because of where I was at. It had nothing to do with the system. But yeah, that's the basic. Yeah. I've had more comments about that book than probably any other book, probably other than my Match Quarters book, which is the split field guide. I've had more people that have come back and been like, man, this saved me, or this really helped us streamline what we were doing.
It helped me this week alone. We found we have a team that's tackle over, and they're the film's so bad, you wouldn't know they were tackle over if you weren't going in and being so meticulous about the formation. So
awesome.
It helped us this week. I mean, every single week I use it.
Yeah. We did, Cody and I did a long time ago, probably 2-3 years ago, we actually did a breaking down one on CoachTube also. I'm sure he's probably got it somewhere in Match Quarters. And it was a really, really good course. It was I did the offensive side, he did the defensive side, but it was a lot of fun just watching how he was breaking people down. And I like to know that as a guy who calls plays to kind of.
It's always good to know what the other person's doing.
Yep. Right.
Awesome. Well, Coach Simpson, y'all got another W over there. 2-0 now, right?
2-0 with rivalry week. If you're watching this on YouTube, my trophy is gone. They took it because now I have to go try to win it back Friday night. So big week for us here at Southside, and so we're 2-0 right now. If we can get the win here, we'll get 3-0 and get my trophy back where I want it to be. And if not, then they get a year where they can brag over top of me. So it's a big week for us.
Just send them the polish so they keep it clean, right? So it comes back.
Yeah, well, it's at the bank right now. I'm sure they're probably cleaning it up, and hopefully they'll give it to one of us Friday night. So, we're going to fight all we can to get it back.
There we go. I like it. We played our first game of the season, fell 13-6. It was one of those really boring defensive games. I mean, both sides just looked really good on defense. I'm part of a brand new staff, new offensive. We went from the flex bone to, kind of, Kenny, it's similar to what you do. It's just a lot of 11 and 12 personnel, full field concepts, which we're going to talk about tonight is our passing game and a lot of counter and stuff. But, the lots of movement. It just wasn't there for us yet. So as a staff, we're going to, hone that in, and I think we'll be good Friday night. But it was good to. I know there's no pretty losses, right? There's no such thing as a pretty loss. But when you go in the first time with all this stuff and you can, you still scored some points. So we didn't get blanked, and we held the other side, who's a really good team. to 13. We felt good about it. So good place to be. And when you're starting that little bit of a turnaround for a program. All right, gents. Well, we will, Coach Simpson, real quick, before we get on to the conversation, if you would like to tell me how we can simplify football for our staff and for our players. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. You know, the longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, you know, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for your that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you know, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, all right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Del in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
I appreciate that, Coach. We're just going to mention one extra thing today, so go listen to the ads. If you skipped them, once again, shame on you. Go back and listen to the ads. It's good stuff. We do want to talk about Miss Simpson's book, and tell us about that real quick, Kenny.
Yeah, Jamie put out a book. You know, she's had to drag our 3 kids through every town in Alabama when we lived there, and then now in Arkansas we live there, and try to keep them busy during a game, and that's miserable for a coach's wife. So she put out a book called I'm at a Football Game. Is designed for kids like 2 to 10. Basically a find it, you know, how many officials do you see? How many flags do you see? But it's something to keep the kid busy at a football game so the wife can actually watch the game. Or if you're a husband and if you're the one taking your kids to go scout a game and you're wanting to scout and they're over there asking a million questions, give them this book. Hey, how many of this do you see? How many of that do you see? How many of that do you see? And so it's probably going to save you about 45 minutes every game. Let the kid go through it, kind of a find and see book. But I'm at a football game. You can get it on my website, fbcoachsimpson.com, or it's on Amazon. So either way, whatever's easier for you. And she made it pretty cheap. It's like $12, but it's basically I'd pay $12 for 30 minutes of I can watch a game. So I'm sure your wife would be willing to do that.
Just extra tax on the ticket price, right? It's good. All right, awesome. Well, let's jump into our quote of the week real quick. I know we started doing that this season, giving us a little sneak peek into your Team Themes Volume 4. So, Coach, why don't you give us our quote of the week?
Yeah, like you mentioned, this is out of Team Themes Volume number 4. This is out of the, I think, Perseverance section. And so it says, this is by Ray Dalio, and I don't know if I'm saying that last name right or not, but he says if you're not failing, you're not pushing your limits, and if you're not pushing your limits, you're not maximizing your potential. I thought we try to talk with our kids a lot about being willing to fail by doing new things. We got a young quarterback yesterday, really frustrated because Tuesdays we try a bunch of crap. Some of it looks awful. Some of it because I designed it and it looks awful. Some of it because he just can't do it yet. It's either one. I said, man, don't get mad about that. Like, we now know we're not going to run that play on Friday night because you tried it. What if you hadn't tried it and we try to call that on Friday? Like, we want to fail in practice so that we're ready for what's going to come up in a game. And I think a lot of times coaches would rather look pretty in practice, and now you got to have it in a game, and you don't know if you can do it or not. So I think that's what we want our kids to kind of buy into that mindset.
That's awesome. Appreciate that, Coach. Well, let's get Cody talking. He's the star of the show today. So, Cody, we're going to let you start with question 1 here, and we're talking match coverages. And look, I'm a fan of match coverage. I'm a big Palms read 2 guy. I think that's what Kenny's basically running over there in Southside. And I know that you are a brainiac of all things match coverage. So I have already gotten past the spot drops and I'm not even really a cover 1 guy, honestly. Our kids are kind of scared to run it. So why don't you tell us, what is the difference when someone says match coverage, whether it's match 2 or 3 or whatever? What is that difference between old school zone
really
and
the way that you separate it into 3 buckets is you have zone, which is essentially your old school spot drop. It's what coaches refer to as country coverages. So that's where you're on rails, you go to your landmarks, you're playing with vision, you're not really necessarily relating to a man, you're just kind of getting to a spot. It was really popular probably 20 years ago, and then as the spread kind of hit, people started figuring out, well, we probably need to play a little bit more man action. So that's where that zone match comes in, where you're going to be playing you're playing zone, but you're relating to a man. So I'm actually relating to a specific person. This is where terms like match, carry, deliver come back, up, out, in. How do we match this route concept? How are we breaking on things? You're still playing with vision underneath, but you're relating to a guy. Like, we want to actually physically touch a guy. This is where you get route disruption. This is where you get kind of collision and carry. All of these verbs and these words start coming out when you go into zone match. And then you have the last bucket really is man match. And what the person that really has popularized this is Nick Saban. And so as the internet has been able to kind of divulge into more playbooks hit there, more talks and coaching clinics, as we kind of are in this information age, you literally can YouTube anything. And as more people have gotten into this, we find, man match zone. And so what essentially is that? And really what that is once you switch, so we are matching the route in front of us. Once we have switched or we have matched that route, or our receiver has reached that indicator, that guy becomes my man. And so anywhere he goes on the field, I am locked on. And so some of the problems that you run into kind of these man match elements is essentially, the old joke of like the Saban cover 7 is really 2-man, right? I think most people are, if you are any kind of into any clinics, the Carl Scott, which was actually at the Lone Star Clinic here in College Station, where some guy was like, hey, isn't that just 2-man? And so the same guys will tell you it's not, but at some point it gets man. And so it's more of a philosophy of how you want to play really kind of your underneath, because we all know like quarters essentially turns into man coverage if you get 4 verticals. I think we all pretty much understand that. Even at cover 3, if you send 3 verticals through, you're at some point you're going to end up in some sort of man coverage. So it's really what the match portion of this really started kind of in the 90s. And Saban explained this as like, well, when you're playing vision drop against a guy like Dan Marino, it doesn't really matter, right? So like if you're watching the quarterback, make completions on you. And so then it started becoming, well, how can we match these guys, but we still have zone principles? And so that's kind of where all of that stuff starts. And so really it's just a philosophy between, are we spot drop? Are we going to be zone match, which that's typically where I was at. I was more of a zone match defender. I think at the high school level, most people are playing zone match, because if they're going to play man, you might as well just run cover 1. And then you have the man match stuff, which we see a lot of times at the higher levels.
Awesome. That's a really good breakdown. I have considered myself a football junkie, and I've done a ton of research. I have not gotten into Saban stuff because I had so much defensive stuff to learn, and then I found your book, so you outweighed Saban. So
Yeah.
congratulations. But this year was the first time I was around a new DC, and he was talking about the difference in man match and zone match, and I kind of even went, let's just what about two match? Like what is that, right? Like let's just read two. I just run palms. What is that called? I don't know what that's called, but that's what we like. And so that was kind of my introduction was this year to like the man match principles, and it was too much. We had to dumb it back down for high school kids. I say dumb it down. We just couldn't teach it to them in the right amount of time, right? They would have got it eventually. So we ended up in like a zone match cover 3. But yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a great point. So we talk about teaching here. How do you teach? Oh, sorry, Kenny, I didn't get you a chance to talk here. Look, I was about to skip you on your
Cody's
own
the
show.
expert. I'll just give a couple little things that
Go
helped
ahead.
us, and then pass it back to him because we want him to be the main guy here. But for me, I think the biggest difference we do try to do some zone match. That's all we do. We're either zone match or we're still old school. We still will carry some spot match on certain downs and distances. Like if we broke you down and we know where you're throwing the ball, instead of trying to get our not great athletes, running with a great athlete in a zone match, we may say, we know they're throwing the ball to the sticks, get to the sticks, then match. So there's we still will use some spot drop idea. But I think the biggest difference, if you're listening to this and you run zone, of what Cody's version of zone with match, and probably what yours is he hit the nail on the head. If you're looking at the quarterback, he's throwing completions right behind you or in the curl zone, or the quarterbacks are too good now throwing that. So for me, the biggest benefit of what we've tried to carry with this is our outside linebacker, overhang, strong safety. Those players, it's hard for us to get an inside linebacker to run. That's not going to happen. We just don't have those guys. But our outside linebackers they're not sprinting out to the curl zone or flat zone or whatever zone you've got them trying to help with and getting lost. Like they're sprinting out there for a purpose of I'm recognizing a route. And then like Cody said, I'm locking on to that route. And so for us, that's been a big help. Our up top guys that we've always played either a version of cover 4 or cover 2, or we can spin and roll it to cover 3. But our underneath guys, that's been the biggest benefit. So if you're listening to this and you're a zone guy, I think that's the biggest benefit of what Cody's stuff is that you might get from it, because we've got it from it, is kind of teaching how we're not covering an area of the field, we're covering the next guy in. And I know our next question is how do we do that? So I'll save my point for that after we hear what Cody says.
Yeah, I know. As I've gotten into consulting this year, it's like the number one thing is you turn on film and you've got all these inside and outside linebackers that are just running to nowhere. Their back is to the play. They're running to spot drop is where they're going. Generally, a hook curl or a curl to flat or whatever, but they don't know where anything's going on. And then the ball's put right between them, so I'm reminded that yes, those have a reason. And at certain levels, if you're helping with a youth team, you're not going to teach them how to go read two. Like that's just ridiculous. Let them just play ball. Right. But at the varsity level, I think it's the day and age when you really do have to go find what that next thing is, right? And go help those kids be in a better place. Sweet. So let's talk about some teaching. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier is like we didn't have time to put in our principles there that the DC wanted to. So Cody, how are you teaching these?
I really think it comes down to language. I mean, it comes down to the language that you're using. I've always been really big on visual cues. So like action words, I'm going to match my guy. So we're going to carry him vertical. We're going to match him out. We're going to deliver back inside. So like having those relate back to, if you think about it, a receiver can really only go 3 ways. He can go vertical, which is up. He can go out, or he can go in. And so then how are we doing that? We're going to match it out. We're going to carry a vertical. We're going to deliver him back inside. So those were the ways especially for the underneath defenders. And like you hit on it, probably the worst coached position in sports in terms of coverage is the linebacker. And I get it. At the high school level, it is still a very much run dominant It's still you have to run the ball at the high school level. There's very few teams that can throw the ball 40, 50 times a game and then be ultimately successful all the way through. That I was talking to a coach the other day talking about, hey, where do you cut off? What is a normal down? Is it 2nd and 6? Is it 2nd and 7? And so a lot of times you have to go all the way down to like 2nd and 10 to where you actually see somebody say, okay, we're going to start passing now. Whereas 2nd and 10 could easily be a rundown for them because they figure, okay, well, you stuffed us on 1st down, we'll get you on 2nd down. Now we're in, 3rd and 5, which is a pretty comfortable situation for an offense, especially like as you get closer to the middle field. So how does this relate back to coverage? I think that at the linebacker position, you can steal points and you can steal yards, basically what I call trash yards. Because you're teaching the linebackers how to drop into coverage. The one spot that zone dropping is still used and I would say you could still be okay with it is when you pressure, whether it's a 5-man pressure, 6-man pressure, and you want to use vision drops off of that. I think you're fine because you do understand like we're sending heat. We know kind of where the ball's going to go, or we know where the receiver is that quarterback wants to get the ball to when we're blitzing. And so that's when you can get some of these vision drops. So in terms of just teaching it, I think it has to start with the language. You have to have a language from the back end all the way front that kids understand, and that also visually, remember, most of these kids are visual learners. If they're starting for you, they're probably the more athletic kids on your team, right? So they're kinesthetically aware of what's going on. And so I want to use words that then relate back to visual cues. Hey, I want to punch the hip when I'm in overhang. I want to punch that inside hip. I want to match him as he's going out. I want to carry him vertically with it, so I know whether I have, and then I like to use too, like capped or uncapped. Do you have a direct safety on top of you? Do you not have a safety? If you don't have a safety, you need to actually turn and trail with that kid. You need to make sure that you're getting vertical. That's another concept that I think when teams run just these static zones, they forget that the vertical of 2, if you're sending, let's say you're playing some cover 2, and you're sending your safety to the apex of 1 and 2. He's the umbrella defender. You are leaving, and you're not running Tampa. You're leaving the middle of the field open. So if you don't carry that vertical at 2, you're going to eventually get hit over the middle all the time. Even in Tampa, they can manipulate your mic. I know Tampa's become really popular now, back again. Just because we're seeing a lot more. What the answer to RPOs was to run cover 1, and so now we have a lot of people that run a lot of cover 1, or they run a lot of like match 3, and so the way that you counter with that is Tampa. So Tampa's becoming more popular, but the problem is you can still get taken advantage of with that mic drop. So I think it all comes down to language, really, at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Kenny, what you got? How are you guys teaching your match coverages out there?
Yeah, Cody hit on the big point. I think it's language. Like, it's what are you saying and what are you doing? Because there's lots of ways to skin a cat, and depending on where you are, Cody's in Texas. They can throw the ball pretty dang good there. And in Arkansas they throw it pretty good too. But depending on the level you're at, you may not need as many coverages as you need, but you still need language. You still need language that tells you. Because like this week, we're playing a team that's going to throw the ball probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 times a game. On a good game, they're losing. They might throw it more, but that's what they're going to throw it. Their concepts are not super difficult, so we're not going to put in just exotic things, but we want to have language with our kids so we understand we're running this coverage and this is what we're going to do. So some of the words that we use, and I'm sure Cody uses them too, is a word like leverage. I think you've mentioned that before. Where am I responsible for? Like, where do I not need to get beat? Do I not need to get beat outside? Do I not need to get beat inside? And then the word that goes along with leverage is help. Like, I'm leveraging because there's help somewhere else. It's like if I'm leveraging you and I'm playing outside, that means I have inside help. If I'm doing the opposite, if I'm leveraging you and I'm playing inside, I got outside help. If I'm taking away the underneath route, I have deep help. So it's always kind of being aware, where's my help and where can I gamble? We do this with every position, is where can I lose? Like, if I lose here, we're okay. But if I lose here, we're done. And they need to kind of know that's where leverage is coming from. Like, I cannot lose inside or whatever it's going to be. Second thing we've started doing, we've been doing a bunch of roll three. My son is our strong safety, and so we want to get him into run fits as much as we can. So when you're doing that, you're rolling coverage, and then there's sometimes we're getting trips out there where we want to give a couple different roll looks to it. We're just basically rolling old school cover three, but we want to do it with some match principles. So the way we're trying to do that is we talk about who has first cutter, who has second cutter. Instead of trying to say you have, like you might say, we're going to roll cover three, so outside linebacker has flats, and safety's going to have the hook curl zone. That's the way you would normally teach that. We're now teaching it if outside linebacker has first threat to the flats, like that could be a screen or an out. You get first. Our safety who's now rolling down, you have the second cutter wherever that's going, because it could be a dig, it could be a curl, it could be a flood route where it's an out. You have the second break, and our corner now knows I've got whatever is coming over the top. I don't have a break. Or you could run corner roll. You could run corner roll, and we wanted to have our corner playing like a stick look. We don't want him jumping the flats. We want him playing that intermediate zone. But we've been doing a lot of that where our outside linebacker, you got screen to first cut, corner, you're hunting the second cut. So that might happen at the hash, and you got to go in there and get it. That might happen on the numbers, and you got to go get it. And safety, you're responsible for getting all the way over the top. And so to me, it's zone, but you're trying to use some of those match principles of we're on a person. Like we're not just going to areas of the field, because we used to run roll cover three. And if they ran like a deep out route, we had a guy that might cover that. But if they ran a curl, he just kind of watched him catch it because he thought he had, he thought he was rolling down over there. So I think that's the big words that Cody's given you for whatever zone you want to run. Whatever zone you want to run, leverage, help, and understanding that we're not covering grass. I think those are big words that any kids can learn. And he also hit on it. So if you guys aren't as smart as Cody is, kinesthetic learner means they don't like film and you drawing crap on a board. Take them out there and walk them through it. Like our DBs do a lot better with walkthrough stuff than they do just watching film. And a lot of times I think coaches, a lot of us are visual people. We draw stuff, we watch stuff, we're visual. Because no offense, but a lot of us aren't real athletic. That's how we had to learn. Okay.
Right. Those who can do, right?
Cody might have been a great athlete. I don't know. My son is a way better athlete than me. He's kinesthetic. Show him film all you want. He will listen. He's a good kid. He's going to try. He's going to learn by doing, by walking through. And so I think that's important when you're running these match coverages, walking through the main concepts you're going to get and using those words, leverage, help, whatever that's going to be, whatever your words are.
I know we put in, this is my first year to get kind of put into the match cover three. And I'll tell you, as Kenny, you were talking about, we're seeing a lot of full field concepts and Y cross is my favorite pass play as an offensive coordinator, right? I love it. I think that it just gives us so many options. Match cover three takes it away, like instantly. It's gone. It makes it a very hard throw for my quarterback. So, we started using words, and you kind of have hit on these already, but, mod, right? Man outside or deep. It's just a very short thing that a corner can say, and it tells him his job in that word, right? And so, I've heard Meg before. I've heard a whole bunch of these words that tell a guy, here's your actual job description. This is what you're doing this play. This is where you can't get beat deep or whatever. And so that was the kind of words we used. And a lot of the stuff y'all are talking about as well. Cody, I've got to get back in your book and get your language it's a great one. And I've watched your YouTube videos several times to try to memorize it. I do it in the off season. By the time we get to the end season, I'm on to offensive stuff and I forget all my defensive learning. So, but we do talk about leverage. Even on the offensive side of the ball, we're using that, right? Where's leverage? Where am I trying to beat this person? Where is his help? So it's really neat that we're all kind of teaching that same stuff about the defense. But that's how we taught it, was just using words that describe what they're about to do. I don't want to tell you, it doesn't make any sense to tell you, hey, you have this guy if he has an out route, if he has a go, if he has a post, but if he just sits down, he's not yours. Why would I try to call out every single route? So giving him, generalities. Mod is a great one. Man outside or deep. If the dude cuts out or comes to you, he's yours. If not, set in a zone and wait on the next thing that shows up. So that's kind of how we're teaching, and the kids picked it up really fast. They loved that stuff. All right, jumping in the last question here, and this one's strictly for Kenny. how are you
answer, Cody.
handling these
That's
full
my
field
question for
concepts?
Cody. So it's my question. I want Cody to answer. That's what.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Split field coverages, and you're getting full field concepts. So, what are you doing to ensure that you're getting higher efficiency
Yeah,
in
I
your
think
coverage?
what's interesting is even if you go to like the NFL, because a lot of the work that I do now is basically NFL based. Like even when you go all the way to the NFL, you really are noticing that there's not that many concepts that are being ran. There's a team that wants to do a certain specific thing, and or they want to run these 4 or 5 core concepts. And I think even at the high school level, it's even more relevant because now we're talking, hey, they really only like to run these 3 passing concepts. When we get in trips, we're going to get these passing concepts. Now, what the offenses have done so much better within the last really 10 years is they've been able to start dressing these up. They've been able to start, you're seeing less static formations, you're seeing more pre-snap motion. And I really believe that on the offensive side, they were really the first ones to kind of lean into analytics, which is not really surprising. Defenses are always going to be reactionary, but offenses start figuring out, okay, when we add pre-snap motion, the yardage goes up exponentially. When we do even if you add a shift, you're moving the defense. You're getting the eyes of the defense going. I think this started with the jet motion stuff probably about 5-6 years ago. People started really leaning into jet motion stuff. Now we're starting to see condensed formations. We're starting to see manipulation of space. It doesn't really matter what the formation is. You're going to get relatively, maybe 5-6. If it's a really advanced team, like some of the teams here at the 6A level in Texas, it's basically a 1AA program, right? So you're seeing a lot more of these advanced concepts. Quarterbacks can throw it a little deeper, so you see a little bit more of these kind of Division I NFL style stuff, but at the end of the day, they're still running these same things. So like what I used to do is I used to go through and self-scout, like what are the 10 most used concepts that we saw, right? And so then what ends up happening is that you really whittle it down to each week. You're probably only seeing about 4 or 5, but you've got to figure out like where are they using it? How are they getting to this? And so I think to me, when you're teaching coverages and when you're building a coverage, like for instance, I think, you talk about Y cross, how are you teaching that backside safety? How are they manipulating that backside safety from that cross that's coming from the field? Are they trying to get 2x2, run a slot fade because they're trying to get you to buy the backside safety and then run the cross underneath of them? Are you a quarters team and so they're trying to run a post behind you to kind of get you to double the post and then run the cross behind you? Or does your front side safety struggle nailing down on that cross and then chasing it all the way in? So what you've got to do, and it goes back to this teaching, I'm a big believer in interchangeable parts. You have active and you have passive techniques where you can change the way that you do. One of the best ways that we could kill Y cross, especially from teams like this, or the ones that wanted to run the double post, that got really popular, is you run the real heavy inside post and then you run the Y cross on top, like underneath of it. Basically it's an updated version of the Mills concept. But what we ended up doing was, if I'm not worried about the X receiver, because a lot of times it's just some sort of a stick route to get the corner to sit down, or it's a fade route or a comeback. It's not, most of them are not running a route back inside. You already have one route coming from the other. So what ends up happening is that you're chasing that over route. I've got a safety that's just kind of doing whatever on the hash, and they're running the post inside the corner if the corner can't handle it. So what we ended up doing was just stealing that backside safety, letting him slide in any kind of outside release. Like I always said, where's the shadow on the number? If the shadow is outside the number, then I want to move back inside because I know I'm probably going to get some sort of Y cross off of it. If it's inside, then I know I'm probably not getting Y cross. If they're running an inside something with that, then I'm getting a dig. They're pushing something to the field. They're trying to isolate the corner on the backside. And so now I can steal that. Well, what that does is now my front side safety knows I don't have to nail down on that cross anymore. I can actually accelerate up the hash, and now I'm better off collecting that post. Or if they're a double dig team, I can snap my eyes back to one and I can see that dig working back inside, because it and teams will tell you, well, it could just be a curl, but it's a man conversion curl. Because if you're playing quarters and you're just running a curl straight into a quarters corner and he just sits there, like, it's not very good offense. So you want him to work back inside, so it ends up being almost like a double dig. So to me, that's one of the simplest ways that we can do it. Do we want to nail it down, or do we want to steal it? And that was usually on that route concept. That's what we wanted to do. And even within that, like you talked about mod, well, we can play different techniques with the corner. We can lock the corner and call it Meg, man, everywhere he goes. We can play, if we know that they're an offense that will convert everything to a fade route, then we'll play mess. It's a soft press, and man accepts shallow. So essentially, we're going to soft press. We're not going to hard press. We're going to bleed soft. I know you're going to convert this thing to a fade route anyway, which is a low percentage throw. Go ahead and have at it. So I think that's where, I think also too, the way that you teach your palms coverage. A lot of people want to run palms. I don't technically consider palms quarters. It's in the cover 2 family, but that's just a philosophy. That's just a way that I do it. It's a triangle, not a box. So to me, how you teach that safety and where those eyes go, you can really steal a lot of these routes and off these route concepts. And I would just encourage you, okay, what are these routes that we're getting? And then how are they dressing them up? And then what are some coverage tools? What are these verbiages? Maybe that we have a little tag in there that we can run. You talk about 3 match. One way to kill the deep cross on Y cross is just to run weak rotation, put the safety in the hook area. So I call it 3 cross, because it's essentially, that's what you're doing. You're cutting them off. Well, if you run from a 2 high shell, it looks exactly like quarters. So they can't tell that you're unless they're really watching that middle of safety cheek to the middle of the field, they really can't tell, which I think is a really good, especially as more play action is prevalent at the lower levels.
That's awesome. I've got to get back into your stuff, man. Listen, you talk about mess and boxes and triangles. Look, I'm gonna coach offense for a few years, but I have no doubt I end up back on the defensive side of the ball. It's just so much.
Well, you're always answering a problem that really it almost can't be answered, because the moment that you answer it, they're gonna have something else. And I think it's that cat and mouse game that I like so much, is just the chess match of trying to figure things out, and you're solving problems. Most now the top talent's going to offense, right? It's the quarterback, it's the receiver. So you're especially if you're at a smaller program, you got to score points now. So I think, for me, it was always, how can we answer problems with not necessarily lesser athletes, but guys that aren't going to be, that have no idea what the offense is doing. How can we react and then adjusting to it?
Yeah, it's the great arms race, man. It's just who can get there first, and then even when you get there first, you're still behind somehow. Like, I love it. So you talked about the Y cross. I know there's a lot of concepts out there, right? And people are like, quit talking about Y cross. I get it. How are you ensuring that you don't waste players here? You talked about this match concept. We love to run a curl on the backside of our Y cross, like a post curl. We want to sell it, get everybody moving across the field, and then just sit down. And you talked about converting everything to a fade ball. We basically convert everything to a hitch. So we're going to hit that post curl and then run to the quarterback. I mean, literally run back and shorten that throw. How are you ensuring you're not wasting players, especially those people that are trying, you got 4 deep. One of those aren't just running off and end up covering grass.
Well, I think it comes down to where you put their eyes. One of the biggest wastes in football is a safety chasing a fade route by a corner in quarters coverage. That's what the corner signed up for. That's why I put that kid out there. I mean, go to any camp ever, and it's all, hey, we're running fade route. They want to, hey, give me right here, give me the money right here. I'm running the fade route. I mean, we've all been there. I'm a DB coach. I mean, I coached corners my entire life. Like, they just want to see the fade ball, right? The receivers want to run the fade ball. Corners want to defend the fade ball. Okay, we get that. Safeties, especially in a quarter scheme, you're never going to get there. That's not your pass to break up. If it's a fade out, right, okay, yeah, now you're supposed to go take that fade route, but really it's the quarterback's reading the out route to get the leverage, and then he's going to try and throw it underneath of you. So even then, you're not really guarding a fade. So I think where you can gain a lot of power back on defense and gain numbers back on defense is, even though you're running split field coverage, you can close the post off of the way that you teach the safety. I used to do a drill, and I alluded to it. I used to call it shadow of the receiver drill. And I would take the safeties and we would work. I would either give them a fade release, or like you said, kind of give them a post release. And we could either run a post or a post curl, whichever one that we were getting that week. But even when you're running that, that's an inside. You have to get inside the numbers, especially into the boundary. Like, I want to get inside the numbers because I'm running a post. Most offensive coordinators, I would say probably 99% of offensive coordinators will tell their receiver, do not ever outside release into the sideline to run a post route. Nobody wants that. You're elongating the route. It's taking too long. Everything's going to be an inside stem. So what I used to tell them is like, look, when you're in the buy one safety, you're going to be flat foot at 10. You're going to look at that X receiver. If it's going to be any sort of glance, any kind of slant off of an RPO, you're going to see an inside stem. He's going to either try and step on the toes of the corner and then break on a slant, or he's going to try and get an inside stem to run the post or the glance. He's going to try and wall off. I mean, because like we just talked about, it's all leverage, right? They're going to try and play basketball on the corners. I think I try to bring most of your best basketball players are going to be receivers and corners. So if you bring in something else like basketball to them, they will understand like, oh, it's a leverage. I'm boxing that guy out. Okay, don't get boxed out on these glance routes. Well, if he goes inside, then I need to expect the inside route. Now I need to roll into the post. I need to nail down on the glance, or I need to nail down on the slant that's coming right behind it. So if I get an out release, then I know it's a comeback or a fade. I'm never going to get there. It's just, maybe you have the one safety in the country that actually runs a 4.3 and can ID it really quickly. Congratulations, because you're probably going to win more games than most, just because your kid's just better than the other kid. I mean, it's high school football. So
and he'll be a
right, exactly. So, but most of us don't have that. So me having him try and work over top when we're not really running a double right there does not make sense for me. So now I want to either slide back into the high hole looking for that Y cross, maybe they're a Y cross team, or I want to climb because they're trying to run post routes from the front side. And I think that's where you can steal back that close post within the split field. And it all comes down to vision. Where are you teaching your kids' eyes to go on the next read? Okay, I'm reading one goes outside. My eyes now are going to snap to the mesh. Where's the quarterback as I'm pedaling at a 45 to go close the post? Or am I snapping my eyes across the field because they're a Y cross team, and then I need to know which receiver's coming on that Y cross? Maybe they're a 3-by-1 team and they like to run a bunch of little shallow routes or climb routes with two. Like, I need to understand that. I need to get my vision back. And what I think that does, and you talk about not wasting players, is now I alleviate a lot of the pressure on the front side safety that's to the field. That he doesn't necessarily always have to be in chase mode. He doesn't have to necessarily always know, okay, I got to nail down on this. Because like you said, even if you want to run that post curl conversion and then try and run a Y cross underneath of it, we're still bringing two receivers in a close proximity. I'll take that any day, especially if I can get my linebacker to climb the vertical hook. So to me, I think that's where it comes down. Corners typically don't get wasted unless you're just running, unless you're so physical with the corner and you nail down on anything that goes flat. Eventually you're going to start getting I think a lot of offensives now started running bubbles with a curl, bubbles with a fin route, bubbles with, some of these short sticks, where, okay, the safeties, working vertical because then we know they're running palms. The corner's so aggressive really early. So it's just bait routes. I think that's where, having a squat corner I think that's one of the biggest things now. I think the high schools could take away from college and the NFL guys is that they want you to throw at the NFL and college level. They want the quarterback to throw to the low route. They will give up a negative route. They will give up the route that is right near the line of scrimmage. What we don't want is the 10-yard curl that turns into a 20-yard gain because my safety overruns it. The corner is now nailed down. Now we've got a chase mode. Hopefully my overhang is climbing at a 45-degree angle, can maybe make that. I think that's kind of where you can, again, going back to not wasting players. If the ball's not thrown, we don't need to come off a trail position in palms coverage off of a vertical route. Don't undress your safety. And especially in palms to the field, I tried to not run palms to the field. I tried to run quarters until I couldn't, just because that safety very rarely could get over. And I had a safety that plays on a full scholarship that plays center field for Dallas Baptist. I had one of those guys that could throw it, and anywhere on the field he could probably get it. He still had trouble getting over top of number one from the field hash. So, because in Texas we play college hashes. So it's, I think you got to know, one, who your guys are, but two, where are they going next? And if you can't answer that, then you're going to be wasting players because they're just going to be bailing to oblivion.
Awesome.
Kenny, what other questions you got, man?
Well, I just had a couple notes from what Cody said I want to highlight through there a little bit. Because you're talking about, to me, he got into a lot of game planning stuff there. Like, this is our base coverage. It's whatever it is. And I know he runs palms and he runs all kinds of stuff. But he talked about, we're going to change the eyes of different guys. And I think that's where I think a lot of high school coaches kind of miss the boat is we give – I've coached defense for a long time ago. We always would give our linebackers a key each week, a run key. We would always give them a run key, and that would change week to week. If you're playing Coach Simpson, you're probably keying the guards. If you're playing a spread team, you might be cross key in the back, whatever you're doing for zone read and all that stuff. Well, we're used to doing stuff like that. I can't remember a time until maybe the last couple of years where I would ever change the eyes of a DB. And now, you're seeing, the other note I had on Cody was he mentioned, he hit the nail on the head, Daniel, I even saw you shaking your head, was offenses is not like we're running 1,000 full field concepts. Maybe two. Maybe two. So what are those concepts and what one or two players' eyes do I need to change to kind of make sure that I'm taking that away? I think, like Cody said, is you can't take it all away. It's cat and mouse. You can't take every route away. As a defensive coordinator, unless you're just going to go man zero and bring the house, then you could if you're better than them. That's the only way, But you can't take it all away. So that's where that game, give Cody a little deal. He's got that breakdown book I'd go buy because that's really good of knowing what are they trying to do. Let's take that away, make them play left-handed, and throw routes they don't really want to throw. And I think that's where defensive coordinators can really make the jump. If you're playing a team where you're taking away the best of what they do and they're still beating you, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. They're just better than you. That's just reality. But if you're taking away what they do best by moving the eyes of your guys, making them throw routes they really don't want to throw, you're doing about the best you can do. And then the last thing I add on that, Daniel, we've already hit on it, and we've gotten into roll coverage stuff. I think that marries a lot with what Cody's saying. Where we call it poach or robber, or I watched the Dolphins this week. They played Jacksonville. I thought Jacksonville had a really good game plan. They were running man two, it looked like, and all of a sudden they would run a robber right down onto where Tua was trying to throw the ball. In my mind, I know the Dolphins won. I thought the Jaguars' game plan was better. I know Miami won because they had better players. Their defensive game plan was superior. They were taking away what he wanted to throw, making him come off a read, go to another read and find it. To me, they were using roll coverage to do that, giving him the illusion of I have this, and then now I'm going to poach this guy, rob this guy, whatever your word is, or we're going to bring this in and take away the route you want to throw and make you throw something else.
Awesome. All right, guys, I think we've talked about it all today. We could go on for another hour or more, but without stealing everybody's time this morning, I think we've covered what we can. Kenny, let's jump into the last thing. Here's what not to do as a coach.
Yeah, and I think Cody does a good job with this too. He's such a smart guy when you hear him talk, but when you watch how he teaches it to his kids and how he explains it to people, it's understanding your audience. I think a lot of times as coaches, we're nerds. I mean, like Cody, you're kind of a film nerd. I'm kind of a film nerd. Daniel, you're a film. Well, that's what we do for a living. We're kind of nerds in that world. I hate to break it to you, your kids are not. Like, and so
No,
the lesson for today is do not make things more complicated. Like your job as a coach is to make complicated things like we were talking about today simple for your kids. And that's the language Cody was coming up with. What language fits your kids where I know my rule and I know what I'm doing and it's really, really simple. So I can give you 5 or 6 coverage looks, but for my kids, we're just learning our rule. And it's a really simple rule that might make one adjustment and now we're in a different coverage. As coaches, a lot of times what we want to do is have this playbook like this and call it cover 7 and cover this and cover this and cover this. Be careful of that. Like you might be running all those coverages, but what are you making your kids learn? Like if they're having to learn everybody's job on every coverage, you're going to overwhelm kids. Keep it as simple as you can for them. And here's what we've started doing. We got 3 new DBs and my son who's a returning starter. So do you want to know who the kid who has to learn the most is? Him, because he lives with me. He has to learn the adjustments. You know what I'm saying? I think you need to be cognizant of that. We've got a starting outside linebacker who's been with us 3 years. He's our coverage adjuster on the underneath stuff. My son's the coverage adjuster on the over top stuff. So I know that might be predictable, but we can use those 2 guys who can handle it to give different looks, and we can keep it really clean and simple for our, we call them my baby starters, my brand new ones. They're out there just learning. Let's keep it really simple on those kids. And so I think that's the lesson for today is Cody's giving you a lot of answers. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Make sure it's simple for your kids.
Awesome. Cody, one more time, man. Tell us about
Yeah,
Match
if you go to
Quarters. Where we can find it.
matchquarters.com, you can find everything. A lot of the stuff that we talked about, you can find links to. Like I said, I wrote a book on match quarters. There's the breaking down offensive opponent. In fact, talking about full field concepts, I have drawn up in that book basically all the top ones that teams are going to run. But again, all links and everything you can find at matchquarters.com.
Awesome. And if someone wanted to reach out with you with a question about, hey, my kid really sucks at this, where would they email you? Or
yeah, so
or
if
DM?
you
How would they
actually
get a
you
hold of
can email me through matchquarters.com. So that's an easy way to do that. Which is, or hit me up on
Go to the website. It's-
Twitter. I do actually check the DMs on Twitter, so I get a lot of questions. It helps me out too. I enjoy doing it because there's stuff that I don't think about. You know, we all live in different ecosystems. So like for what my reality was here in DFW is definitely not what the reality was for a guy, say in Michigan or a guy in, you know, Pacific Northwest or even the New England area. Like I loved hearing all that stuff and having those questions. And so typically, and at this point, I've been doing this since 2016. I have probably written something about it or have a clinic on it or something. So, or a video I can point you to.
Right. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Social media wise, I'm at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I also have a website, chamberlainfootballconsulting.com. And then jump over to YouTube where I'm slowly trying to build a library of, look, I'm never going to be on y'all's level, but I'm going to continue putting out dumb stuff. I have a video game thing. I can play NCAA. So there's some videos over there about that. Whatever it is, go find your pick. My wife's about to start posting videos of sideline treatment, concussion protocols, how to assess a right now injury. Your quarterback just went down. He came off holding his shoulder. Is he out? Yes or no? You've got to make a decision. You don't have help. If you send him over to whatever your ambulance service is called, he's done. They're going to take his helmet. He's not coming back. So before you do that, she's going to make a little video so guys can kind of self-assess these players and determine how far they really need to go. So go over to YouTube and start checking out things on there. Kenny, everything's at fbcoachsimpson.com, right?
You got it, man. You got it.
Look at that. Build a website and fill it full of stuff.
That's the deal.
That's the motto.
And as I would tell you, Cody's able to do this stuff full time because coaches support him. So go out there, you're going to spend money on stuff. You are, and go buy his stuff. It's good stuff, and that lets him do more help for other coaches. So Of course, you can buy my stuff too. That helps me pay for my daughter to go to a private college, so that helps too. But really, he's got a lot of free stuff, just like I do, over at his website. If you don't want to spend money, there's free stuff, just like on mine.
Awesome. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter. We want to thank you for being a listener of the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when new episodes are out. It's about time to start leaving reviews, guys. As you listen, you enjoy the content, drop us some review, whether it's 4 or 5 stars. If it's lower than that, let us know why. See if we can fix it. There's a lot of coaches out there that go off of that stuff. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.